Kia ora. Good morning. My name is David Galbraith, and it's my pleasure and honor to chair this morning's plenary session, Getting the Word Out. One of the most important things botanic gardens do around the world is reach out to their communities, whether it's through formal education programming, informal education programming, or work they do within the community themselves, outside of the garden walls. We have to reach out and touch people with what we do, with what we know, and share our passion. If we don't do that, we're not fulfilling our mission, and we're not going to be generating the support that we need to do the work that's so important to us. This morning we have two wonderful speakers taking a look at different aspects of community support and outreach. Scot Medbury, the CEO and president of Brooklyn Botanic Garden, will be making a presentation entitled Jumping the Fence, Reaching Out to the Community. Sophia Shaw-Siskel will be speaking on why gardens are important, especially now. Sophia is CEO and president of Chicago Botanic Garden. So I'd like to introduce Scot to come up without further ado. I also have to note that he was in one point in time in New Zealand, working at Pukekakura Park. So Scot is no stranger to New Zealand and no stranger to most of us. Scot, please come on.
Well, thank you, David. And I want to especially thank Alan Matchett and the staff of the Dunedin Botanic Garden, everybody at BGCI and BGANS who have made this wonderful conference possible. It's just been extraordinary and it continues to be so most appreciative. I should also give enormous thanks to our staff at Brooklyn Botanic Garden, whose work I am presenting today. So as president, I don't do all of the programs that I'm representing, and a lot of passionate and dedicated people do, and so it's my honor to present on behalf of them. So Brooklyn Botanic Garden, at 103 years old, we think of as America's quintessential urban botanic garden. We really don't have any peers in the sense of being integrated into the fabric of a sort of dense city core. And we imagine we'll have many such peers in the future, with now half of the world's population living in cities. So, maybe we're showing the way a little bit. Brooklyn has some extraordinary metrics that are worth kind of contemplating. We're about 2.6 million people in Brooklyn alone, so variously the third or the fourth largest city in America if it were separate from New York City as a whole. Also, in a region that's the metropolitan statistical region is about 20 million people. So it's really a vast area of people that are needing to learn about the environment. One statistic that I always sort of bowled over by, though, with respect to Brooklyn, is that we'd be second only to Las Vegas in having the least amount of green space per capita in the United States. And so that just underscores that Brooklyn is densely residential, and outside of Prospect Park and a few other things, there really isn't a lot of open space. So our role and importance in our borough just will only continue to grow and already has. Brooklyn is very much in the international press as sort of a hip place and a place of, food and locavorism and such. And to that, I always say that's all true and for sure. But there are many Brooklyns as well, and there are Brooklyns that have very challenging socioeconomic circumstances and poverty. And so we're very much focused on those audiences and on those neighborhoods. And so that's some of the things that I'd like to share. One of the things that is really quite interesting to contemplate, and I want to throw a question out to all of you, and hopefully in the remainder of the conference we might have a chance to talk about it. Our founding director, Charles Sturt Gager, created a sort of a new model for a botanic garden in the world by putting youth education out front and every bit the equivalent of the other core programs that botanic gardens were known for. And that was quite a visionary thing to do. My question to you is to think about what would be a comparable sort of visionary a step for us in a startup botanic garden today. What would be something that would be so revolutionary? Because this was really quite extraordinary. Botanic gardens really didn't program as strongly to their visitors, and they certainly didn't go out into the schools. And it was really up to teachers who were well trained to figure out how to use the resources of a botanic garden. At our inception, this was his vision, to make this a big part of our programming. By 1912, he'd hired a large cadre of teacher trainers. By 1914, opened the first children's garden and a botanic garden in the world. And today we've really never looked back and have some robust programs which I'll be sharing with you. We really are at a locus of a lot of visitation, and it's enormous. So when we're talking about jumping the fence and getting out into the community, there are sort of two sides of that. One of them in the community outreach is to get them to come to the garden. And in Brooklyn, that's a really exciting opportunity for us because we are really central to many things and well-serviced by subway lines and things. But then there's also go to them where they live, in their neighborhoods and in the schools. So we do both of those, and so I'll be describing some of those both. Now, the vision for the garden really was one that was quite brilliant, and I have the honor of my predecessor, thrice removed, who's 92 years old, is at the garden with me every day, who says about our founders that they really just basically did everything right. And I think there's kind of few things where you could always say that, but they really did. The first 15 years of the garden's development really happened very quickly, and mainly what we have at BBG is things that were put into play at that time. Just a brilliant set of things, and including a core set of collections that are grouped by plant families, sort of a 19th century taxonomic approach to laying out the collection. So that's all extant and something that we're currently really enriching and supporting. There were also plans for several gardens that were absolutely revolutionary in their vision, among the first of their type. And one of those was the native flora garden, which was envisioned in our founding year of 1910 and opened in 1911. And the vision for that was to recreate the plant communities of New York City prior to European settlement. And that was really kind of out of the box because there was still a lot of natural extant pockets of vegetation around Brooklyn and New York generally. At the time this was done, the prospectus for this garden used the word ecology, which was only coined in 1907. So it really was a visionary effort. We've just finished and opened this summer an extension to that garden and returned two sun-loving plant communities that have been shaded out, a regional collection of the pine barrens of New Jersey and out on Long Island, and also a meadow that once was 40,000 acres near to us that is pretty well, I think only 30 acres remain. So that's been an exciting project, and one that has sort of rare scientific and ecological integrity in that most of the plants in that new garden were wild collected. Other gardens were also sort of among the first of their time. We had the first Japanese-themed garden in a North American botanic garden, a garden from the 1950s that was the first in the world specifically designed for visitors with sight disabilities. So really a kind of a wonderful history of innovation. But for the most part, most of what we had was put into play early on, and we've just grown it in. We're currently now engaged in the second most intensive period of site refinement in our 103-year history. And so that's a big period of change. We opened a new herb garden 3 years ago that has been a tremendous fit, and we love it. It really is at the scale of the garden. What everybody says, if you visited Brooklyn Botanic Garden, it has a lovely sort of human scale about it, and the pacing of the exhibitions and things are quite nice. So this is a nice new addition, and actually the first new garden at Brooklyn Botanic Garden in 55 years. We had been heavily investing in our programs. Now we're making this time to invest in our site. And so that is a transformational time, and change is often difficult and an interesting time for us. We launched a $100 million capital campaign to align with our centennial. We're at $91 million with the end game in play. So hopefully next time I see you all, we'll be done with that. That'll be nice. And the vision for that was not only to make improvements to the garden, to strengthen all our public entrances and to add 4 acres of new gardens and really drive the gate a little bit, but it was also to create a stronger financial basis for the garden overall. And so this campaign strengthens our endowment rather substantially. It also develops some new earned income programs and thereby generating revenue that can support programs that don't necessarily pull in external funds or raise money. So that's been very exciting. It's strengthening that financial base, I think, is the work of all of us. We're, of course, happy to share our experiences. I think everybody's context is unique, but if anyone would like to know more about how we sort of conceived of this campaign and put together these ingredients and created communications around them, we're of course, all eager to share. So from that, we pulled out about $75 million worth of capital improvements. I can kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel on those projects. And as I mentioned, all 3 new entrances and other things. One in particular has been a very exciting project for us. It's a new entrance to the garden that's brought quite a bit of visibility. Now, one of the things that is kind of a dubious distinction is that we believe, and nobody's corrected me as I've said this, that we have the highest single day attendance of any North American public garden by a long shot. And that's not necessarily a good thing, because you would rather spread your attendance out more over many days. But we do these festival programs that bring in, and in our case, as many as 36,000 people a day. And we saw that this last spring for our Cherry Blossom Festival with about more than 70,000 people just on one weekend. So you can see what happens to our little entrances. They're not scaled to this kind of attendance, and nor do you build to the peak day attendance. But anyway, that drove from a master plan the idea to create a new entrance. And so in the reaching out to the community sense, messaging about that, what was happening and why and how we were doing it, we spent a lot of time with that and continue to do so. And so I have something to show you that will kind of show one of the ways that we've engaged folks. But we've done a lot of things on the construction fencing, in the garden and outside. There is that beautiful new building, which has a lot of sustainability features, a geothermal heating and cooling system, a living roof, as you can see. It's deceptively small. It's about 22,000 square feet, but it doesn't look like it. And it has just been a wonderful asset to us, with a proper New York City facade on the street, and just a lovely breezeway entrance with a retail program that's been a good success for us. An exhibition gallery that gives us a chance to talk a little bit about plants specifically. One thing I feel pretty strongly about, we're in a really saturated cultural marketplace in New York City with just dozens upon dozens of excellent museums. There's so much to do. And so to not only create a reason for somebody to make their time to come to see us, but also to make time to come again is really a big challenge. One thing we thought not to do was to trivialize our mission and make the garden about anything more than plants. And so we have just completed, actually, or process of completing a new strategic plan, but really puts forward that plants are central to everything we do, and that we really emphasize, or will attempt to emphasize, experiential interactions. So we want to get our visitors to roll up their sleeves and touch plants and do things with plants. And so that's an interesting challenge, and we've kind of staffed up on the interpretive side to see how we can accomplish that. So other functions of this building include revenue generation through an event space that we use for our own functions and things, but is just a lovely new space. It does have some sustainability elements as well. That wood on the wall on the backside is site harvested ginkgo wood. We actually took out a couple trees on the site and milled, killed, dried, and used it right in the space. So that was kind of a nice thing. I mean, we're supposed to be sort of the guardians and stewards of trees, and so it was tough for us to take a couple trees out, but nevertheless, we have over 200 ginkgos on the property, so we just did right by it. We didn't displace the need for wood to some distant community. We harvested our own plants here. So this building just has such lovely and sensuous curves. It's very contemporary, and the living roof in particular has been one that has captivated a lot of people's attention. And so here's where I have a little bit to show you how we got people excited about it. We've had a history of doing a few time-lapse videos. We did one with the cherry blossom unfolding, and that sort of went viral of sorts on Vimeo, one of the early videos that did. But we did one with the planting of the roof, so I'm going to show you that and see how that works. that was just a fun thing to get people kind of excited as that building came along. It really it's brought a lot of visibility and recognition to us. Thus far, we've won about 15 awards. One in particular is worth noting. There's a couple still in play, but the American Institute of Architects at their sort of annual design review recognized this building as one of 8 that defined design in the United States in 2012. So we were really honored to bring that kind of distinction to our borough. Fun project. We've got a lot of other things going on and opportunities to engage our community as we do that. One in particular around water, where we're recirculating the water in the garden. We fill this lake in the Japanese garden with about 22 million gallons of potable water that run out the garden and right out into the combined sewer and into New York Harbor. And so we've long had a plan to recirculate that. And partly that will address a big environmental problem in New York and 200 other American communities, which is about the outflow, wherein in heavy rain events it overloads the storm sewer system and fouls the estuary and such. So we have kind of a nifty design on that uses satellite technology and 17 other data points to predict how much rainfall is coming in advance and sort of lower the level of our terminal pond in advance of a storm. One of the things I love about the garden most is that, people really do interact with it. It's not fenced off and you just look at it from afar. So, I think generations of Brooklyn kids have gone home in squishy shoes from playing in this brook, and that's as it should be, and so we're happy for that, and are excited about what this project is going to do for us. It brings us into the historic heart of the garden. It's a delicate project to manage because this is a garden that was built with horses and plows and not with heavy equipment. So to be able to put this recirculation project underneath the road beds and things is a big thing, but one that we're up to the challenge, I think. Well, now I want to turn a little bit to our youth programming. I have the honor of speaking this afternoon and the chance to go in a little bit more depth. But I think this is the element. There are sort of 2 elements that really have been distinctive in our history and that have really made, account for many of us being there and committing our careers to this institution. And youth education in particular is a strong one. I mentioned that the Children's Garden opened in 1914. We're celebrating the centennial of that next year, so we're very excited about that. We have a number of distinguished alumni of that program, but it has been different from the way many children's gardens are positioned today. It was really an urban farm for kids, and it's a place for city kids to learn to grow vegetables. And it's an amazing program because it's one of the few things in human society that really hasn't changed at all. And when we did a 90th reunion, we had a 100-year-old alum of the program surrounded by the current crop of children, and they were happily sharing pretty much the identical experience of germinating seeds and growing them on. And as we say, the kid that didn't like vegetables is all of a sudden pushing zucchini on their siblings because they grew it. And so that's been happening for a long time, and it's a remarkable set of programs. There's a lot of mechanics to that element, and this garden is really the sort of focus of about 30 different programs. So we use it in a lot of different ways and with a lot of different populations, but remains an exciting one. We all have our favorites. One of my favorites is the Children's Farmers Market, where these children are selling stuff that they've grown for sort of fake money, this kind of monopoly money they've got there, and that is always amusing. My favorite interaction, when they first started that, I saw this girl who had a little sign up that said mint water over her stall. And I said, oh, what is in that? And she said, mint and water. So there it is. But we're really investing in this youth programming. Actually, as I speak, and sort of nervous being so far away, we've just jumped into another big set of projects, including strengthening our southern entrance, and where we bring about 150,000 school children to the garden. And so this is the school entrance, and one that lacked a comfort station and lacked some other amenities. So that's just getting started now. And with that comes a discovery garden for children and young families that is a little different from the children's garden in that it's meant to be a place for very small children to explore and to discover. And with immersive forest, meadow, and marshland habitats, we're hoping this is a trailhead for a lifelong discovery of the natural world. If you think, each of us in this room, how we came to our careers, I will bet you it's based in childhood. And perhaps you could argue that one of the most important things we can do is kind of really create those nature experiences, and especially for city kids, while they're young. And as I say, you don't randomly become a biology major in college. It's rooted in something that inspired you when you were younger. So we're very excited about this program. This too, I'll be talking a little bit more about this afternoon, but it's again an opportunity to do experiential things, and especially with very young children, things that are hard for parents to accomplish in New York City. So, we do a lot at the garden, but we also do a lot of things outside the garden as well. And in youth education, we have a program that is really tilted to the least advantaged New Yorkers and the least advantaged neighborhoods, and where we go into the schools and do sort of nature-based programming. And often those all involve experiential elements. So you see these children planting up some window boxes. If we do this right and we inspire the teacher, we really never have to go again because the teacher knows how to do it. It's not that hard. So I think we're very smart about that sort of pedagogical dimensions. Our staff in youth science education, about 30 people. And so there again, we're very eager to share with our colleagues how we do this. And maybe they fit our context best, but there are often elements there that are transferable. We also have a program that emerges from that Green Reach program that goes out into the schools that allows the teachers to identify children that are particularly keen on nature and the environment to be with us in the summer and do a camp with us where they're exposed to a lot of things, and we even take those kids camping. And so a lot of those children have never been outside of the city, and so that's an extraordinary program as well, and really creating some leadership. These things sort of they nest into them, and the next sort of range up is for middle school students, a program called the Garden Apprentice Program. These are these young people in the blue shirts, and this is a leadership development program that is 4 years, 4 tiers, that progresses in the final 2 tiers to a paid internship, which is really what kids that age want. They want their own money. And so what they do is a lot of things for us, but it's extraordinary. It's not incidental that it's about environment and such, but it's in good measure also about leadership. And so we see these shy young people show up, walk out of our institution very confident after their time with us, and it's just extraordinary. They interact with visitors and staff discovery guards that they create the content for, and they mentor younger children in the children's garden. They also do a lot of things, sort of classroom-like. Here's the Garden Apprentice Program Climate Change Debate, and you have the affirmative and the negative sides here. So they do a lot of interesting activities, and a lot of that, around things that we've been discussing at this conference, around food security, et cetera, are things that, content that they bring to it. So it's an extraordinary program. It's said that the middle school audience is a tough one for cultural institutions to work with. What's brilliant about this is that, for the most part, these children don't know each other. They come from different schools. We actually draw from all 5 boroughs in New York City. And so these kids are superheroes that they come on their own on the subway and come to the garden and really do a lot for us. The next stage up, and not all of these related, is a high school. We 10 years ago co-founded with the New York City Department of Education, the Brooklyn Academy of Science and the Environment, with Prospect Park, our neighbors also. And that's been an extraordinary project. It's right across the street from the Botanic Garden, and I think proximity is everything because it's very easy for any of the teachers to use the garden in their curriculum, and the garden actually has become part of the campus of that school. So we do a lot there and a lot of science investigation. Interestingly, the table in that, sort of as an aside, the table in that view is on a hydraulic lift. We have a series of classrooms that are paired with teaching greenhouses, and in those teaching greenhouses, you can raise and lower those tables to the height of the children that you're working with. So if you have kindergartners, it's set up that way, that kind of stuff. So pretty great. Of course, the high school has led to a lot of success, a number of scholarships, Gates Millennium Scholars. We do a lot also with teacher education. And so with middle school science teachers, we help them strengthen their skill sets and to use the garden to augment what they do. Now, just turning a little bit to the community horticulture part, and my colleague Melanie Sifton, who's here at the garden, our Vice President of Horticulture, she spoke about one of our outreach programs called the Brooklyn Urban Gardener, and that was a terrific talk on Monday. We have a suite of programs that take us out into the neighborhoods, and there again, the garden is really important to that because we've been doing this for now 20 years and we know our community pretty well, but they don't necessarily know each other. It's a big borough. And so we've been using the garden more as the crossroads and the mothership for all these programs. So there's a suite of programs. The Brooklyn Urban Gardener is one. There's a street tree stewardship initiative. The Brooklyn Urban Gardener puts knowledgeable citizens out on the streets to help with community gardens, with street trees, with school gardens and things. It's an extraordinary set of programs and ones that we're very proud of. The biggest of which, and I go back to this, is the Greenest Block in Brooklyn contest, which has regreened God knows how many blocks now. I used to say it was 20,000, but it's got to be more than that, and really regenerated and rejuvenated community associations and neighborhood block associations around something really positive, around plants. We do a lot of other things that bring people to the garden through festival programming. Japanese culture has been a big push for us. We've always done a lot of traditional things. We have this old Japanese garden, a very old collection of bonsai, but in recent years we've started to go with all this contemporary Japanese culture. That's brought the average age of attendee down about 10 years, and so it's a very kind of interesting and sort of bizarre phenomenon that you have all these young people dressing up in costume and dutifully paying the admission to come to the event. So that's been good. Other things, the Chili Pepper Fiesta we had this fall, that's a great event for us. That tends to tap into the more the foodie, if you will, culture of Brooklyn. Other one-time events, we did one on pollination, and that had a lot of fun things for kids where these children, they were wrapped up in little egg cases that they had to break out of and then put on their wings and fly around and stuff. So that was fun. And things around the bonsai collection have been important as well. And we sort of paired little trees with little food with a wonderful sushi restaurant. And so we keep trying to find ways using social media and other things to do audience development. Also, this Saturday we have an event, a Halloween event, where people, American parents don't tend to take their children trick-or-treating so easily in big cities, and so the garden has become a place where you can come with your children in costume and have a great day. We get about 10,000 people that come to this, so this has been a good event for us as well. We try to do some exhibition programming, and some of our peer institutions in New York City do a great job of that. We don't really have indoor venues sufficiently scaled to kind of mount anything big. So we try to use the outside of the garden and do things that might be kind of fun. We've done some native plant things recently. We even had native plant trading cards here so that kids could get interested in this, and that was fun. But better fit for us is things that take place out on the ground. So we've been doing some ephemeral sort of art installations. This is one by a famous American twig artist, Patrick Doherty, who's done a lot of things in even other parts of the world and stuff, and that was a great hit for us. That was kind of squished by Superstorm Sandy, and so we upcycled it into something else, which was interesting. So now parts of that have been worked into this other sort of nest-like structure that was made from about the 70 trees that were wind-thrown in the storm, so that's kind of fun. Brooklyn Botanic Garden has a long history in publication, and we continue to produce handbooks, and some of those have been really relevant to our mission and history and distinctiveness. This has been an important one that we've put into the hands of our First Lady, Michelle Obama, who's very keen on youth gardening. This is a title we did a few years ago that the Bureau of Land Management helped support, so grateful for that. And continuing to find comments that find publications that are relevant. So I'm just going to wrap up and say that we really are a remarkable community resource in our city, different from a park, really a sanctuary. As we survey our visitors, the sanctuary aspect really comes to the top of the list. You're not going to get mowed over by a bike or bitten by a dog. You're in a very safe and sheltered and beautiful place. And it's one that is something that people really seek out. After 9/11, we suspended the admission charge at the garden for 6 months following the terrorist attacks and said, when New Yorkers needed us the most. And we've really maintained that commitment during the downturn when we've been really hit by reductions in government support and other things, that we wouldn't compromise the beauty, the safety, or the accessibility of this garden when New Yorkers really need us. And so we haven't done so. And so my feeling about the garden, and I think It's such an inspiration to go around on any day. When you walk around, you pretty much see everybody there. And I sort of saw that here in Dunedin as well, that the community really comes out. And we have a very diverse community. So you see people from very different walks of life there. But it just gives me such hope because it sort of pulls the best person that you are from you. You look at people, at how they're acting with each other and how they're helping each other and such, and probably quite different in other times in their life. But when they're at the garden, it really kind of does inspire you to be your best self. And so that's what's led us to believe that what the world needs now is certainly gardens and gardens in cities, because there we might really actually get it together on this planet and figure it all out. Well, thank you very much. An honor to share this.
Thank you very much, Scott. We're going to hopefully have time for a few questions at the end for both of our speakers, so I'd like us to move right on if we can.